Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is Tom Zuck's U.S. Civil War Letters, 1863, Part 6, U.S. Army Hospital, Cairo, Illinois. Post Hospital, Cairo, Illinois, September 22nd, 1863. My own dearest Anna, since last writing to you, I have received both of your letters, the second one this morning. You cannot imagine how much pleasure it gives me to receive the precious missive so fresh from the hand and heart of her I love so well. You may think it strange that my affection should be so intense at this time. Therefore, I think an explanation may not be uninteresting. You know that for years, or at least after Nelson went out into the world to do for himself, I was the only son and brother at home. And although outward circumstances may not have indicated that such was the case, yet I was a pampered and petted child, and of course knew no better than to look for such treatment after I had reached man's estate, and therefore was not a fit subject to appreciate the fond and endearing caresses of her whom I had chosen for a companion, and on whom I had lavished my hearty best affections. After our marriage, we lived together for a year and a half, and I thought no one could ever be more happy than I was in the possession of a wife so loving and so much beloved. Indeed, our little house, though humble, was to me the brightest spot on earth. Yet I did not fully appreciate the love of her who had willingly given up home, friends, and all to be the companion of one who was to her a comparative stranger. But the time came and fate decreed that we must separate for a season. At that first separation came a pang of anguish that appeared almost impossible to endure. The hope that we should meet again buoyed up my spirits, and I went about the duties of my soldier life with apparent cheerfulness, and for a year endured almost every hardship. There it was that I learned to appreciate the kind offices and endearing attentions of wife. The absence of those little attentions and that kind sympathy which no one but a true wife can bestow made me long for the time when I could once more clasp her in my arms and bless her for her kindness to me. The time came again, and the privilege was afforded me to make a short visit to my wife and home. I went and found you, dear Anna, the same true loving girl that I had left a year previous, and our child, that second object of love and affection, had become 10 times more beautiful than when I left. And you can judge of the strange emotions that filled my heart when first I took her into my arms after my arrival, and felt that she was mine and yours, a new bond of love between us. And every day that we remained together but served to strengthen the feeling that had taken possession of my heart. You can now, dear Anna, form a correct idea of the reason why it goes so hard for me to be separated from you now. But I live in hope of soon being able to once more enjoy myself in your sweet society. Now as for that Reynolds affair, I don't want you to think that I have lost any confidence in you, for as you say, I know that you have too much good sense to allow any improper advances from any such person. Therefore, don't give yourself any uneasiness on that score. You wanted to know in your former letter how my money held out. I had something over $4.50 when I reached Cairo, which I think will be fully enough to defray all my expenses between here and the brigade, which is now either at or on its way to Galveston, Texas. I have never heard anything more in regard to that steamboat explosion, or whether any of the 96 suffered in it or not. And as for my military tickets, no conductors are mean enough to charge a soldier anything more than military rates on any road, but that contemptible S&D Railroad. Your ma thinks I tumbled that lunch she gave me out of the car window, does she? Well, all I have got to say about that is she is very much mistaken. Cake and such things are not to be picked up whenever one feels like having them, and therefore I was very careful to keep it in good order until it gradually dwindled to nothing under my repeated attacks. Doc Henderson thinks Cairo, Illinois, a very unhealthy place. It is so at certain seasons. That is when the Mississippi River is up and the country overflows, but at all other seasons it is as healthy as most towns. We have startling news today and yesterday from General William Rosecrans' army, but as yet they are conflicting and we can come to no positive conclusions in regard to things down there. Editor's note: the Battle of Chickamauga, Tennessee, and Georgia. But that they have had a battle, and a heavy one, and that is very evident. Charlie must have been in this engagement, and I shall anxiously await any intelligence in regard to his fate. I will write to him today, now that I have his address, and in the meantime, if you hear anything of his whereabouts, write to me. I would not be surprised if a great many of Rosecrans' wounded got to this hospital. Tell your pa to write to me. I would like to hear from him personally. So you think Frank has a notion to take a wife when he gets out of the service. What makes you think so? Was it what I told you, or not? For my part, I don't think it would be a bad step for the young man. That is, provided he can find a good girl. I have not yet written to Marion. Won't they think I am a kind brother? But it's not because I don't want to. It's just simply because I have neglected it. I must draw this letter to an end. You must write as soon as you get this, and write as often as you can, for I so much love to receive letters from you. Tell Nettie her pa sends her oh so much love to Ma, Nani, Emma, and all the rest. Goodbye from your ever affectionate husband, Tom. Now, this is a letter from Anna to Tom. Marysville, Ohio, October 18th, 1863. My dear husband, I was so glad to receive your letter a day or two since, for I had begun to feel quite uneasy and anxious to hear from you, not having heard for 2 weeks. I think the folks at Marion will think very strange of you for not writing to them. You must do it because I know they wondered why you don't write. I have not heard from there since I last wrote to you, I believe, but when I did hear, Lib and the children were still there and did not know when they would leave. Nelson had been sick and told Lib he was not sure of staying where he was unless his health got better. It would be a great way if after sending their goods out there, he would move back to Ohio. Hurrah for Ohio and its new governor! I suppose the soldiers all say, "Bully for John Brough." Union County elected Brough by a majority of 875. Pretty well done for this county. The people here are jubilant over the election and had an illumination last Friday night. Of course, the Clement Vallandig hammers feel down in the mouth. Did you know we had the Honorable Van Fleet over here to make several speeches this campaign? I wonder how he feels over this election. They had a grand time in Marion, Ohio, the day John Brough spoke there. So Mrs. Schaefer from Waldo told me last Saturday. I went to Delaware, Ohio, then purposely to have Nettie's photograph taken, but could not get them because there were so many people in the town. John Brough spoke there, and the trains took us over half fare. It was worth the $50 to see the large delegations. It was perfectly grand. They have a new Daguerrean galley came here yesterday, and I will get those pictures this week and send them to you as soon as possible. I know you're anxious for them to come. I saw John Williams last Saturday in Delaware. He had been ordered to report at Columbus and was on his way going back to Marion. He said he would be home until the election was over. Marsh Godman has not gone back either. John said the 96th had gone a short distance from New Orleans to Brashear City, where they were in a fight. Did you see General Ulysses S. Grant and his staff when they arrived in Cairo, Illinois, a few days ago? Nellie Moses was real sorry she was not at home when you came through Delaware, Ohio. She says she would have liked to see you so well. John Alt of Marion, Ohio, was buried about 3 weeks ago. Also Miss Patton of Middletown. Ma just got home from Springfield, Ohio last Monday. Jep Shingley had her left arm broken at the wrist while her ma was there. She was suffering a good deal from it. We are very anxious about Charlie. They have not heard from him since the battle, and we do not know whether he was killed or taken prisoner. One of his comrades who was wounded in the battle of Saturday wrote to us that on Sunday after the fight, Charlie with 3 other boys went out a short distance from the camp after water and never came back, nor has anything been heard of them since. His captain thinks they were taken prisoners, but there is no knowing what the guerrillas or sharpshooters might have done with them. Ma is very much troubled, and we are in great suspense to hear further particulars. I want you by all means to stay where you are. If you are comfortable and offered that clerkship, accept it. I would much rather you would be there than exposed to the dangers of the field. Ma says for you to do the same, and don't think of leaving Cairo, Illinois. She sends her love and says she is trying to train your little girl, but she has considerable temper to tamper with. We had a letter from Willie last week. He is at Cumberland Gap, Tennessee. Edmund Paget, of whom you speak, I have heard of before. I passed by his father's house when I was in Springfield last winter, and saw his father, who came out and stopped Scott Shingley to know when they had heard from Tom, his brother. I think I understood Mr. Paget to say he had 2 boys in the army, and one was in the same place where Jep Shingley's brother Tom was. I heard his history having been driven from Virginia, Mike Maness is here working in the Democrat office and voted for Clement Vallandigham. More news I will write you another time, as I must stop for tonight. All send love. M is sick in bed with a high fever. Write soon. Ever yours, Anna. Cairo, Illinois, October 20th, 1863. My own dear Anna and darling Nettie, I have been putting off writing you now for 2 or 3 days, expecting first to hear from you. But as the expected letter has not made its appearance, I will try and make up by writing one to you. This thing of staying around the old hospital is getting pretty tiresome to me, but the doctor has kept saying I ought to stay a few days longer, and as I have been acting upon his advice, I find myself still here. If they would only give me something to do to keep me from getting the blues, I would like it much better. They have had me overseeing the issuing of ice from the ice houses in this place for several mornings now, and that makes things a little more lively than they would otherwise be, for all the hospitals between here and Memphis get their supplies from this point. This thing of bossing a lot of darkies is not altogether to my liking, but enough of this. I hope to get off to the brigade before many days. We have all been feeling glorious over the election in Ohio, and in fact over the election everywhere. Before the election, it was almost considered a disgrace to have said that we belonged to the state that had a set of traitors, mean enough in it to put up for the sufferings of the people such a heap of treason as Clement Vallandigham is. But the rebuke that they have received from the loyal hearts of the people of my own native state is enough to make any or all of Ohio's sons proud of their noble state. I must tell you about my voting. We had made arrangements to open polls for the Ohio voters in the hospital and about Cairo. Here at the hospital, but for several days before the election, there was an article appeared in the Cairo Daily News stating that the officers on board of one of the gunboats on the river would open election for Ohio voters. So the Ohio boys here concluded to go there and vote. But when we went there, lo and behold, they told us that no one but sailors and Marines would be allowed to vote there. So we expected to lose our votes entirely, as our medical director happened to be from Ohio. He immediately ordered a steamer to take us to Mound City, where we cast our votes notwithstanding the naval officers to the contrary. But I am afraid, dear Anna, that all of this will not be very interesting to you. I would like to know what has become of Charlie. He has never written me since I have been here. Does he write to any of your folks at home, or do you hear from him? Do tell me, for I am beginning to think that something serious has happened to him. How is Willie getting along by this time? I have never written to him since I was at home. Did you learn whether John Williams went back to the company before the elections or not? I have not known of his passing through Cairo, and I have watched pretty closely. Wednesday, October 21st. I commenced this last night, and my light giving out, I was compelled to stop. I have just come back from the ice house and feel pretty tired, but we'll finish this and try and mail this, so it'll go out this morning yet. I hardly know what to write. You don't know anyone here, and therefore nothing that I could say about anyone would interest you. Oh, how I would like to see you and my little girl this fine morning. I never since we were married have so missed you as I have since I left home this last time, and I sometimes feel that I can't give up and consent to stay away from home until my time has expired. But it must be, and I will try to be as happy as circumstances will permit until the time comes for us to reunite and once more enjoy the pleasures of each other's society. I must stop. Don't put off getting the pictures taken any longer than you possibly can help, for I am getting very impatient, and am looking for every letter to contain the dear image of those I think the fairest forms in the world. But I must stop, so goodbye for this time. Your ever affectionate husband, Tom. Post Hospital, Illinois, Cairo, Illinois, October 25th, 1863. My own dear Anna, I have just returned from church, and not feeling sleepy, I thought I would write you a few lines before going to bed. I received your last letter in due time and was so glad to get it, for I almost feared that you had forgotten to write to me. I scarcely know how to feel about the news you wrote me about Charlie, but if he is only a prisoner in the hands of the enemy, I think there is not much cause to fear anything serious will befall him, for they will have to treat him as a prisoner of war. And if he is so treated, he will soon be paroled and sent inside of our lines again, and then he will at least have a chance to go home until the time comes for his exchange. I was not surprised to learn that something serious had befallen him, for he has always been prompt in answering my letters, and as he has never replied to my last letter, I very naturally judged that there was some very good reason for it. If you hear at any time anything further from him, don't fail at your earliest opportunity of writing and giving me the particulars. For I have soldiered long enough to know that a soldier's life is not the most desirable, even in the camp of friend, let alone that of our unreasonable enemies. While I am writing, my mind has been running very naturally on the horrors of this war, and maybe a few of my many thoughts might not be uninteresting to you. A little over a year ago, I was snugly ensconced on such nights as this by my own fireside, passing the hours, oh so happily, with my own dear wife and child, and dreaming of security and exemption from many of the troubles of this unfriendly world in our happiness. Oh, how pleasantly passed those golden hours of content and happiness and love to me and mine. Long years of enjoyment seemed to appear in the future if we only made the slight effort that was necessary to secure it. But a change comes to my dreams. Hundreds of miles now intervene between me and those more dear to me than all else on earth beside, and bitter has been that one short year that has passed since the happy hours past that I refer to, and now so fondly rise on memory's page. How many hours of toil and danger and suffering present themselves to my mind, when I think of the many fair and manly forms that, like me, came out from all the sweets and comforts of domestic life to share with us the dangers of the camp and battlefield. Sad are my thoughts when I realize that so many of them have left their bones to bleach and whiten in a distant land, far from the home of kindred friends and loved ones. But they have given their lives, a willing sacrifice for their country's good, and I hope and trust that God in His infinite goodness and mercy will reward them for the great good that must result from the battle that they have helped to wage against tyranny and oppression. Yet with all this to console us, we cannot help but think of the great amount of suffering that must yet ensue, for hundreds of families have been deprived of fathers, sons, and brothers. Thousands of widows mourn in loneliness. Numberless orphans bewail the unhappy circumstances that has bereft them of their natural protectors. Years of pain and suffering must ensue ere the baneful effects of this unholy rebellion shall cease to have been felt. Oh, how deeply lost to all human feelings must have been the mind of man or men who first conceived the idea of severing the ties of this once happy union. But they alone will have to answer for it in that last great day, for the stupendous amount of human misery and suffering that they have been instrumental in bringing about. Yet there is a darker side to the picture than all this. While there is so much misery resulting from this horrid war in the loyal northern states, what must it be in those whose sons have raised the traitorous arm to strike a death blow at our free institutions? What consolation can these widows and orphans have in after years when they think of the infamous cause in which their husbands and fathers died? Oh, how doubly black and foul the crime of the instigators of this terrible war appear when we look at the thousands of poor fellows that have been duped and forced into the treasonable service, to be torn and mangled and die an ignominious death of a traitor, and all to perpetuate the abominable institution of human bondage, the right to deal in human blood, to buy and sell their fellow creatures. But it has always been so since our first parents fell from original purity. The demon has had possession of the hearts of men, and it appears that the more men become civilized and enlightened, the more inhuman their natures when engaged in war. Still, it may be the contrast in this civilized age of the world that heightens the darker shades in our corrupt and fallen nature. Dear Anna, you will think strange that I should write in this manner, but I cannot help but think of these things in the midst of such reveries. I sometimes can in imagination see soft peace once more spreading her wings over our beauteous land, and even dream of brighter hours yet to come than it has ever yet been our happy lot to enjoy. Let us pray that such may be the realization of our future life. My lamp begins to burn low, and I am almost writing in the dark. So I will once more say, dear Anna, write often, for your letters drive away these melancholy thoughts and make me feel as if your own dear presence were near. Kiss my dear little girl for me. Tell Grandma that I shall ever be grateful for the interest she takes in our dear child. Tell your pa to write to me. Goodbye for this time. Your own affectionate husband, Tom. Post Hospital, Cairo, Illinois, October 29, 1863. This is a letter from Tom to his sister Maria. Dear sister, I feel ashamed of myself for not writing to some of you before this, but I had written a letter to Father some time ago and was wondering why I did not get an answer. But upon overhauling my portfolio the other day, I came across the letter that I supposed had long been sent off. This is all the apology that I have to offer for my neglect, and I hope you will receive it as sufficient. I would write much oftener, but this Cairo is a very dull sort of a place, and not much of any interest occurs that one could write about to make a letter interesting. I suppose Anna has informed you long ere this the cause of my detention at this place, and therefore will not go into detail, but simply state that through the advice of some officers from our brigade I stopped at the soldiers' home in this place, and the gentleman in charge of that institution told me that I had better report to the medical director who was stationed here, which I accordingly did do, and he sent me to the hospital, where I shall remain, as the doctor in charge is not willing to send off any who he thinks unfit for active duty in the field. I have not heard from Marion, Ohio, since I left, only as I hear through Anna's letters. I heard a few days ago that John Williams was still at home, and also that Marsh Godman had not yet returned to the regiment. But I suppose they must have returned ere this. If they only knew that I was here, I would like very much to have had them called and seen me at any rate. I want you to write to me as soon as you get this and tell me all the news. Has Lieutenant Colonel Brown ever come home or not? Was Lib gone to Nelson yet? Anna wrote me that Nelson had been sick, and the prospect was that he would not take his family out there. I suppose you have heard that Charlie Feller was among the missing at the Battle of Chickamauga, but from all I can learn of him, it appears that he has been taken prisoner. This will be hard enough for the poor boy. I am glad that nothing worse has befallen him. Tell Father I want him to write to me and tell me how business is in Marion. A good shop like the one they have in Marion could make it pay in this place very well. They are paying common hands $2.75 to $3, and they are very scarce at these figures. This place, in my estimation, is destined to be quite a city before many years roll around. They are building rapidly, and if the war was only ended, make some improvements in the way of filling up to prevent the annual overflow, for most of the city is covered with water for several weeks in the winter and spring, that drives the inhabitants who live on the lower spots to the second stories of these houses. They say it is an uncommon thing in the spring for the year for people to do most of their outdoor work in skiffs and canoes. I have a miserable pen to write with, and my light is getting low, so I'll have to stop. Don't fail to write to me as soon as you get this and tell me whether Jane is at home yet or not, for I would like to write to her. Tell Father and Bowen to write to me. By the way, Pauline has never thought enough of me to favor me with a line since I have been in the service. It would be a great pleasure for me to hear from her. I often think of Mother and of how well she treated me while at home. My soldier's life has given me a fine appreciation of home and its comforts, and little things that I never could appreciate before now recur to my memory and compel me to acknowledge myself at least a very ungrateful son. I don't say this for effect, but I feel it. I have not so much pride about some things as I once had. You must not fail to write as soon as you get this. Goodbye from your affectionate brother, Thomas F. Zuck. Post Hospital, Cairo, Illinois, November 19, 1863. My own dear Anna, I received your last letter this evening and hastened to answer immediately. I would have written a day or two earlier, but I expected to hear from you before. We received our pay today. Mine amounted to $52, and I want to send 40 or 45 of it to you tomorrow. And whether it is better to send it by mail or express, I don't know, but we'll write to you again when I send the money. I am sorry that I did not wait until I received your letter before writing to Charlie. I sent him a nice long letter, but only signed my first name. Besides, I did not send the silver, and if I had known that it was necessary, I fear that a silver dime would be an article that would be hard to find. This old pen that I have, I can scarcely write a readable letter, and therefore I will cut this short. When you get the money that I send you, I want you to use it just as you please, and don't stint yourself in any way. I'm still acting as hospital clerk and will have to fill the place until Mr. Terry, the steward, returns. By the way, I must tell you, he played us a pretty trick. He left here to go to the state of New York with some sick men, and he had not been gone much over a week until the doctor received a letter from him in which he stated that he got married in New York and was then on his way to Muscatine, Iowa, his home. Mr. Paget is now our steward. I have been looking for Godman along here for several days, but as yet he has not made his appearance. I have a notion of starting to the regiment with him when he does come, but have not fully decided on that point yet. Our regiment is mounted now, and hereafter will not have quite such hard times as they have had before. I got a letter from home the other day, written partly by Father and partly by Maria. She said something about Mr. Phillips being here to see me, but I could not tell what she meant. If you know anything about it, I wish you would enlighten me. I must stop. Don't fail to remember me in your prayers. Kiss my dear little girl for me and tell her that her pa thinks of her very, very often. Goodbye for this time. Your affectionate and devoted husband, Tom. P.S. I don't know what to think of your fortune teller. Mr. Baguette tries to make me believe that they can tell what is in the future, but you know what my ideas are on that point. Tom. To be continued. Well, that concludes today's presentation. We'll continue next time with Tom Zuck's U.S. Civil War Letters, Part 7. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.